Today on Agenda, we are doing pretty much a news and topical
things of the week. We came together, we were having a bit of a yap, and then we realised that a lot of stuff has happened recently, a lot of stuff that we're interested in.
Yes.
So we've got politics, music, and gaming.
Yes.
That'll be the three sets, but I'm sure you've seen the title. So
this one is a bit different. There will be no clips challenge off at the end, and there won't be as many different segments and different types of stories and stuff. This is all just news.
Two lads on deck chairs discuss the news.
Yeah, topical morning.
Yeah, topical morning to you. There we go. I felt like Jacksepticeye just then. All right. So, shall we get the hectic one out the way first?
Yes, the big one, the big news. Julian Assange.
Yes.
He's now free.
He's back in Australia.
Yeah, he's been free after 5 years in prison and 7 years in an embassy. So we thought, since it seems to be all wrapped up, closed his story.
Yep.
Well, he might do more things, but
yeah, obviously
the main saga has come to a satisfying conclusion at this time. So I thought we would go through timeline and talk about him. How familiar were you with Mr. Julian?
It's one of those things where like everyone's heard the name, everyone knows that something's going on. I think I was most aware when he was hiding out in an embassy, and then the second he left the embassy, he immediately got arrested, which I always found rather amusing. You know, essentially being on house arrest for 7 years. But which I didn't know too much. I didn't know the specifics of it. I just know that I was of the opinion where I understood that he ran WikiLeaks, and then you had, leaking confidential information, and so he was wanted for spying or everything. But at the same time, I'm of the mindset that you need whistleblowers to keep people accountable.
Yeah.
And so, I think the protection for journalists and protection for people who do find out the truth, I think that's important. But yeah, anyway.
Which is an interesting case with this one because there was a bit of a double standard within it.
Oh, okay.
But so for me, I wasn't quite familiar until he came back. Like I've heard the name like you, but I did. This was a chance for me to do a lot more researching and to understand who he was. So let's just say we're gonna probably get some facts wrong, and
most likely. we may get some things wrong. So
we're
disclaimer.
not experts, but I thought as like a
what
general.
Do you mean? You and I are the most politically minded people this side of Canberra, being where the capital is. So I'm sure there are many more people who are much more qualified to speak on this than we are, but they just
like as an average of Aussie standard, I like to think of us
average blokes who work day jobs.
Work day jobs and not constantly on the news cycle, and
neither of us are even in offices. Like we both work, trades and retail. That's us.
It's a trading and a retailer
discussing politics. Yeah, here we go. This should be fun.
So this goes. So before this, I've got an article up here for facts and everything. But Julian grew up in Townsville.
Okay.
And at a young teenage age, he got interested in computer hacking.
Oh.
And at 26 years old, he was arrested in Melbourne for breaching military access computers, and so he did face jail time for that, but it wasn't a severe
because it's kind of like hey, fix your security, man.
But
a random bloke can break in.
At that point his mindset kind of changed. I think after that he went for a more journalistic approach than a hacker approach, which is interesting for what happens next during his lifetime. But in 2010, this was the big year for WikiLeaks. It became like a sort of known site. The 2018s they were publishing, but in 2010 that's when shit started going down.
Right. Okay.
So in 2010 April, WikiLeaks publishes classified material about American military activity in Iran and Afghanistan. So in my research, it was around 220,000 documents leaked.
Whoa.
And the big thing that everyone grasped onto was a video footage of
that I did read about,
a chopper gunning down journalists in a.
I thought it was Iraqi civilians.
Yeah, it was Iraqi civilians and journalists mainly.
Wow.
That were there interviewing it. I don't think the journalists were Iraqi themselves, but it was
Wow.
Because in the footage, you can see them saying, "Oh, he has a weapon," when it was a camera. And like they gunned them down immediately and said they look hostile from a chopper. I can't remember.
Yeah. Wow.
But then another thing is the van came up and tried to pick them, the survivors, I think the journalists, and they shot that too, which had 2 children in it.
Oh.
So that's why this was such a big deal. But the thing with WikiLeaks at this stage was they would leak it to the New York Times and the Guardian first as like a sneak peek, and then they would publish it to their site. But what the New York Times and the Guardian does was redact names and everyone's info.
Right.
But WikiLeaks didn't.
They didn't. They just put things out straight up.
So what do you think of redacting names? WikiLeaks is like everything's open, so you know who's responsible. But
I suppose there's levels to it. I mean, I'm never an ass. I do not believe in one solution being correct for everything all the time. So I think, and that's what makes governing, and that's what makes making decisions so difficult, is there is no one decision that will be correct all the time. You have to be constantly changing.
Yes.
So I would say that there are times where redacting it is appropriate, and there are times where not having it redacted is appropriate. And I suppose, just making a judgment call and that kind of thing. So I think in terms of, when you're saying the people whose names were redacted, are these the names of the people that were in, like, the soldiers themselves?
Yeah, so it was like email lists of people talking about it, and then the soldiers involved, and then who leaked the information as well.
Yeah.
Which comes up again. But yes, so that was the main reason that he got in trouble.
Yep.
And then this is when they started coming after him. So Swedish police questioned Assange about 2 separate charges of rape and molestation, which he denies, saying there was no... And then that ended up getting thrown out, but we'll continue.
Because I had read that his claim was that it was just a ploy to get him to the US.
That was his claim, that they wanted to extradite him to the US, and that was their way of doing it.
Yeah, right.
So that's why he originally got taken out of the embassy, but that doesn't happen till later.
Yep.
Sweden issues international arrest and extradition.
Yeah, extradition.
Warrant for Assange to get him back into the US, and that's in November. And then December, Assange presents himself to police in London and is granted conditional bail.
Right.
So he was meant to be in prison, but then he does post bail. And then we are in 2012, 2 years later. UK Supreme Court rules that Assange should be extradited to Sweden. Assange and this is when. So
this is when he was
arrested for not going on bail. Is that after?
I think this is after.
Maybe that's when they arrest him at the when he leaves the embassy, is for breaking bail conditions.
I think so, yeah. So we've got here that in May 2012, the UK Supreme Court said that he should be extradited to Sweden.
Yep.
Then in June, he enters the Ecuadorian embassy in London, requesting asylum, and then in August, he's granted asylum, which is crazy because June, July, August, it's taken them 3 months to grant a guy that's been inside their building for 3 months to actually grant him asylum, which is interesting.
And it was interesting
because what does he do for during that time?
And then why the Ecuadorian embassy was always my question.
I think there is a genuine reason to that. I do remember reading it a long time ago, but I can't remember what it is now, which doesn't help us at all. But I'm fairly sure there is actually a political reason.
I thought it was like something against the US, but I can't remember.
Like a law or something like that where, I don't know.
I just remember the
Google time.
Prime Minister at the time, or President, was sympathetic to his cause at the time, and that's why he granted the asylum, because it changes.
We've got... he was given protection by then President Rafael Correa, a strong advocate of WikiLeaks. Right. So the president of Ecuador was a strong advocate of the thing. So you were correct.
So it was the president. He had but I don't know why he chose Ecuador. Maybe they had contact beforehand, after.
Father not intervening. Interesting. So, okay. Anyway, that's besides the thing. Let me put that down. All right.
I forgot to mention this. He's the co-founder of WikiLeaks. He's not the
founder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So he was the founder of WikiLeaks, is why he gets a lot of this, because he's the editor-in-chief for it.
Right.
So he's always responsible for the ones that are posted. He's not always the journalist that posts this information.
Okay. So
then, in February of 2016, so he's in the embassy for 4 years at this point. In February, UN panel rules that Assange is being arbitrarily detained. So he's confined to the embassy, which he thought is like a prison of sort.
Yeah.
But, so he's not in prison, but he is in prison.
Yeah, gotcha.
So, and then this is when, during the 2016 Trump and Clinton election is happening, WikiLeaks releases confidential emails from the DNC and the Clinton campaign. So this is when he decided to hack into the Democrats' emails lists, and that's when that pretty much is attributed to why Trump won the campaign, because he kept on harping on the emails released on WikiLeaks.
Interesting. There you go.
He was a big advocate, because at one point...
I mean, he would be a big advocate. Won him the damn election, so fair enough.
So one of the reasons was he did a speech and he asked Russia to start trying to hack into the democracy emails as well.
Oh, I think I do remember that.
Then after that, the Mueller report, which was the investigation into Trump for all these activities, revealed that, yes, Russia did try to hack into it. But I don't think they're the ones that did it. It was the people in WikiLeaks did it.
Interesting. Okay.
So yes, they attribute that to his win, and then afterwards, Trump just forgets about WikiLeaks. He praised them during the campaign, then after he had nothing to do with it. And
that sounds very American. It sounds not even just American. That sounds very politician of them. Yeah. You know, like, oh yes, I want you to do this for me while I'm trying to win, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I've won now. Piss off.
Okay. Now in 2017, Swedish authorities drop all investigations into Assange. UK warrants for failing to report in court still out. So that was the rape allegations.
Yeah.
So they got dropped, which is interesting.
That is very interesting.
So it kind of proves Assange's point that they just wanted him extradited.
Yeah, it might just be. It's one of those things. You know, you never really know. People drop cases for all sorts of reasons. But yeah, I think it does point towards the conspiracy theorist in you does tickle an itch. You know.
So what do you think would have happened if he got sent to the US?
If he got sent to the US,
if he got extradited,
he'd be behind bars for life, bro. Like, he would.
I think it was reported they were going to charge him with 175 years in prison.
Life, that's life in prison.
It's like the law that stops military personnel from leaking documents. Espionage. They wanted to charge him of 34 counts.
They're charging him for counter like espionage, spying. They're charging him for spying on them, and it's like, sorry, brother, you did the wrong thing. Unfortunately,
But his defense is he was given information and he published it as a journalist.
Right.
So their defense was the First Amendment of free speech.
Okay.
Is why he got out generally. That's why he's been released recently, because he won on that.
The First Amendment, my free speech.
So how do you feel about journalists posting information that they've gotten?
Again, there's no right answer all the time. I would say, as a general, information is good to release. I think it's...
Is it more damning if they hold it back, though? If they don't release it?
Depends on the context, I suppose. I would say in the majority of cases, I think it would be important to release it. I'm sure that there are some situations where it is important to not release. Like, for example, when murder or something like that happens, or someone commits a violent crime, I think that, redacting the names of the people affected might be good. Redacting information about where that person lives, what they do, I think that can be important. For privacy and safety reasons, I think it can be important. But at the same time, there are different levels. Like, when you're representing, an organ. Oh, true. I'm about to contradict myself. I guess it's one of those like.
It depends what you're whistleblowing on.
Yeah.
But I feel like most of the time the media should redact names. I've never been a fan of posting names everywhere.
Posting names, yeah. That's fair.
A random example is like lottery winners.
Yeah.
I always think they should redact that shit,
never,
but they
never
always
redact
post
it.
the name.
Yeah, they're like, this guy right here won $2 billion. Everyone who's friends and family with them, it's time to say hi.
Yeah. So I'm not sure on the redacting of names and things, but I'm pretty sure I would say redact all the time.
Yeah, fair enough.
And then, they dropped the investigations. Ecuador grants Assange citizenship. US indicates Assange under seal for military leagues.
Yeah.
So he actually I didn't know that. He actually became an Ecuadorian citizen to stay at the embassy longer.
I respect that. Fair play.
Okay, 2018. Westminster Magistrate Court upholds Assange arrest warrant for skipping bail. There it is. So that's when he gets arrested. Yeah, okay. And then in 2019, so that's a year later, that's when he gets arrested.
Yeah.
Assange is arrested at the Ecuador embassy for failing to appear in court and on behalf of the US authorities.
It's April 2019.
117 doctors published open letter entitled End Torture and Medical Negligence of Julian Assange.
End torture and medical neglect.
Assange. Of Julian Assange in Lancashire. A renewal call for him to be transferred out of the UK's
Belmarsh prison.
Okay.
Okay, so I suppose at that point, that's when his story would have garnered the most attention. Is when things change, that's when people talk about it the most. Which is why we're talking about it now, because he just got back.
So doctors actually pushed for it.
Yeah,
and there was heaps of protests and pressure on.
That's only 2020, far out.
That's right. Okay, so this is when Trump administration just ended, and because I watched something of like how they got him out, which is just published and stuff. So when Biden got in after the election, they saw an opportunity with a new government and new Department of Justice to negotiate his release. Yeah. So that was one of the main steps, was new government. So this is when it started coming through, and I think Kevin Rudd was a part of the negotiations to get him out as the diplomat to Australia and US.
How interesting.
So this is when they start the negotiations, and this is probably why he's going to court now. And
he appears facing new indictment with 18 counts. Hearings conclude on October the 1st. These started in September, by the way. Yeah. So again, a classic courts thing, takes 2 months to discuss something. Then we jump into 2021. He's denied extradition to the US because of mental health concerns. Ecuador revokes his citizenship, and then the UK High Court rules Assange can be extradited to the US. So at the start of 2021, mental health issues. Yeah. Then July, he's no longer Ecuadorian, and then in December, he can be.
Yes. So that must be when he's done. Okay, and then so that happens in 2021. So he's about to be fucked, I guess. Yeah. So he's still in the UK prison at this time.
Ironic you say that, because in 2022 March he married his longtime partner and lawyer Stella Morris in the maximum security. So yes, he was getting. Maybe I shouldn't say that. Anyway, but you keep going.
Okay, so he marries his lawyer. I realized she was her lawyer. I knew his wife was working with the case, but I didn't actually know she was the lawyer.
Direct, I have she wants to get him free. Yeah. That's fair enough.
300 doctors from 35 countries write an open letter to Home Secretary Priti Patel, criticizing Assange's cruel and humane treatment.
Inhumane,
sorry.
If you say cruel and humane, that's kind of the opposite of what we're going for here.
Patel signs
extradition order to the US.
Okay.
Alright, we jump into 2023.
So this is when the appeal starts to happen.
Yep.
And then this is when the negotiation really heavy up. initial appeal against order is dismissed.
That's in 2012. That's in June of 2023.
So that's when he's not meant to be extradited.
Yeah.
So he was, and then they appealed.
So what he spends? So he spends 2 years in the US.
No, he must have. That must be the appeal process. So he must have just stayed there and then appealed it straight away.
Right.
And
Oh,
it's taken
true. So
2
he's
years.
still in the prison Belmarsh.
Yeah.
Right. And then they're like, yep, you can go to US.
Yep.
And then he tries to argue against it,
And
which
when
that takes 2 years.
So when was Anthony Albanese elected? 2022 or 2021?
No idea. No idea.
I think it was 2022.
I can't remember.
Because it's... Quick Google, we'll cut this out.
When was Albanese elected? When was Albanese elected? Yeah, 2022.
Yeah, okay. So
2022.
So this is when he's elected, and that's important because he was a part of the negotiations. I think he paid a lump sum to get him out as well.
All right.
He spoke very vocally about it, where the previous Prime Minister didn't. So that's when...
So the permission's granted in May of this year.
Yeah.
And then in June, he's unexpectedly released after agreeing to a plea deal with the US and returns to his home country of Australia.
Which is his now.
Right.
So, I think the plea deal was interesting because that's right. That part of the negotiations was they wanted him to plead guilty.
Yeah.
But they wanted it to do it in US soil, and they were never doing that. So the creative solution was one of the Asian islands that the US owns. They sent him there to do his plea deal because it's technically US soil.
Genius.
And it was closer to Australia. And then that's when he came home.
And then he came
That's
home.
why he was so quick with it too.
Yeah, right. He's just quickly island hopped, gone, yep, guilty, and then he runs.
Yeah.
Just dips.
So, and then he comes back here in Canberra.
Right. Is he Canberran?
Yeah, he arrived in Canberra.
Wow. Okay.
It was a big moment.
Far out.
We have him back.
So I've got we've got some bloke hiding out in the city that we live in.
Yeah, he might have left already. Drove away.
True, driven away. He's gone to...
Maybe he's gone back to Townsville.
Gone to Wagga or something like that. You know, he's just going to go hide out in the middle of Australia doing sweet fuck all. Yeah, fair enough. How interesting.
Yeah, that's probably mostly wrong.
Sorry.
My hat!
Took out his hat. My bad.
But I did want to talk about, like, journalist integrity and...
in general.
The fact that there's a site leaking informations. Like, there is a court case happening at the moment with the Afghan files. The person who leaked it got sent to prison for, I think it's 8 years. And he did pretty much the exact same thing of what's his name?
It's all good when it doesn't happen to you. You know? It's one of those...
So he was a veteran in it, and he was just confessing like war crimes that the Australian military was doing in Afghanistan. Yeah. And then he's gone to prison now.
He's gone to prison.
And the reason I
think whistleblowers should be protected.
So the reason I said the US had a double standard was they had a journalist in Russia who pretty much published things in Russia that's leaking stuff. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to bring him back, but they didn't allow Julian Assange doing the same thing. They didn't want him going back to Australia.
Yep.
So that's why I think one of the reasons that they credited for him coming back is not only the different changes in government, which Biden and Albanese, and so that's why we've gotten him back.
As I said, it's all good until it happens to you.
So a man facing 175 years in prison, did 5 years in prison, and didn't have to do any more. The sentencing for
technically, however,
guilty.
It has taken 13 years of his life. You know, that's the thing. I think that's hard to...
He's always reported as a hacker who broke in. Interesting enough, the way he hacked into the files was he just called the US military, knew exactly who, and just asked for his username and password, and then got in.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
He said he was like, "Oh, I'm just IT support. I'm just improving your computer settings. What's your username?" They would say, and then it's like password. And he's like, "Thank you. Your computer's going to be offline for a couple hours." And then that's how he got in.
Wow, my goodness, how crazy is that?
So yeah,
that's pretty hectic. Far out. I suppose So I guess the moral of the story is, what do we think about whistleblowers?
I think they're very necessary, and they should not be punished for
I agree.
They are.
I
like
agree.
if you look at the Boeing whistleblowers who seem to be
just happened to be. Oh no, they got murdered by 6 shots. They killed themselves by 6 shots to the back of the head.
Yeah,
you know?
in a hotel car park.
Yeah,
and there's been 2 murders of it so far.
Yeah,
but
it's shocking. You know,
it is shocking.
Yeah,
and it's just. It depends on the whistleblower, like off a company, or like it does affect jobs and everything. But when it's
do the right thing,
yeah, it's just doing the right thing.
Yeah,
and it's getting so punished for it.
Yeah,
like the fact that Australia doesn't have free speech either. That's why we have so many.
We don't have free speech.
No, it's not in our constitution. Or
oh wow, how good!
Bill of Rights.
I don't think anyone cares though.
There's parliamentary privilege, which gives politicians who say anything in Parliament immunity to say.
Wankers. God, I hate politicians.
But
absolutely
as
shocking.
Australians, we don't have that. That's why we have so many defamation cases.
Right.
Because we don't actually have US's First Amendment.
First Amendment, yeah, you can't be like, First Amendment right to call you a bitch. You know?
So we don't have free speech.
Yeah, interesting. Sad.
Yeah. So whistleblowers here, that's why they're getting so much punishment.
Not as protected. Yeah, because I've always had the opinion that whistleblowers should be protected, I think.
Yeah.
You should be able to do, and that comes across so many different levels of the world and society as well, you know. But again, there's no right answer to everything, because then people could just say anything about anyone and then they'd be protected. So
that's why I don't get hate crime. Like hate speech, sorry.
Yeah.
When people complain about hate speech, and then it's like, do you have free speech or not?
Yeah.
So how do you classify what's hate speech and
what's just free speech?
Anyway,
that we're not condoning racism. We should just make that very clear. But yeah, that is an interesting point to make. I do think.
How do you define it?
How do you define hate speech?
Yeah. Is it just aggression to
a cultural style, yeah, or maybe like belittling, or.
But then where's the line with just bullying?
Yeah, true. Yeah, is it bullying, or is it a hate crime? Is it only a hate crime if you're doing it to a culture that's different than your own? Or can you commit hate crimes against your own people? Anyway, that's something that we're not going to discuss.
All right.
At least not right now.
Your news is...
But we've got new news.
Yeah.
So, out of the politics and into the happy, fun-go-lucky stuff. So, for those who are musically minded, I've got to ask you, the Babadoe, have you ever heard of the story The Odyssey?
No, I have not.
Do you know Odysseus, the king of Ithaca? And do you know the Siege of Troy?
The Siege of Troy.
With Achilles and Hector.
Not much.
And Paris and Helen. Those characters.
No.
So, set the scene. Given the fact, I cannot believe you don't know this. So, the Siege of Troy, or the Iliad, that kind of thing. So, Helen is the wife of the king of Sparta, I believe. Helen gets... Some Trojans come along, Paris. Aphrodite, the god of love, comes down and does her little magic, does her wee woo.
Yes.
And Paris spirits Helen off back to Troy. King of Sparta, I believe, is Agamemnon or Menelaus, one of the two. I always get them mixed up. I can never remember who's who. They're both like brothers, right? One of them is the husband. The other one is the king of the Mycenae, which is like an area that just has lots of allies, you know, down in that sort of area of Greece. And naturally, he's like, oh, this is a slight against me. So he gets his brother, the more powerful one, and they just start recruiting a whole bunch of allies, and they take him over to Troy. Really long siege, brutal. Then the Trojan horse. So Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, is credited with the creation or the idea behind the Trojan horse.
Because I know about that.
He's meant to be very like... well, conniving is the wrong word. He's got guile. You know, he's very sneaky. He's very smart. So the way that these stories were created by Homer, they're epic poems. So you've got the Iliad and the Odyssey, two separate stories. The Iliad is all about the siege of Troy. The Odyssey is about Odysseus's return home.
Oh, okay.
So the war takes like a long time. I'm fairly sure it's like 10 years, or it's a hectically large amount of time. But the journey back for Odysseus actually takes even longer because he gets stuck and he has all of these problems. Anyway, there is No, I know you do love a musical as much as the next man. So there is a bloke called George Rivera Herons, who I've got some information up on my phone here, who has been making Epic the Musical, which is basically a concept album for the Odyssey.
Oh.
And it is so cool. So it's a whole bunch of concept songs, and the way he does it is he releases them in sagas. So you've got, if I go to Spotify, I literally was listening to it this morning because of what I will be talking about. But you've got the Troy saga, the Cyclops saga, the Ocean saga, the Circe saga, the Underworld saga, and then most recently, I believe it's called the Thunder saga.
The Thunder saga.
So he releases them. I'm going to show Connor, but I'll pull up a photo. He releases them in like chunks. So each chunk is a particular area. And the reason this is news is because just about 2 days ago, he released this new saga, the Thunder saga.
Yeah. How is it?
It's so good. I love it. So pretty much where we're up to in the story, I'll explain all of the various sagas. So in the Troy saga, it's all about Odysseus right at the start of the siege of Troy and starting his journey home.
Okay.
So he takes over the city of Troy, but he's given a quest by the gods to kill the infant child of Hector, who is one of the heroes of Troy, one of the princes.
Oh.
Odysseus doesn't want to kill a kid. It's literally a baby. It reminds him of the child that he left at home 10, 20 years ago, whatever it is. And he goes, okay, I have to kill it. And then he drops it off a wall or something like that. And then
humane, do it.
Yeah, the next song is, he's singing, I'm just a man. I'm just trying to go home. I want to see my wife and kids. I'm so done with war. And then Full Speed Ahead is all about them starting on the boat being like, oh, we don't have any food. We need to stop and get some food. They see an island. The guy's like, wait, I see an island, but like I see people on the island, but there's no smoke. So this is a bit weird. This is a bit magical, a bit fantasy. That's how the Greek stories works. Then he goes onto the island and he's with his friend Polites. Now Polites is he's always singing about you've got to greet the world with open arms. You've got to love the world, love everybody, love everything. So Odysseus is grappling with himself, being like, I'm so sad about having to do all these terrible things. I just want to be nice. I want to be kind. And so he takes Polites' messages to heart, and he starts using his heart to think. But Athena, who is Odysseus's patron, is looking at him going, wait, what? I didn't teach you to use your heart. I taught you to be a great general. A general does not use his heart. He uses his head.
Oh.
But then and sings about, you're a warrior of the mind, be smart. Then we go into the second saga, the Cyclops saga. So the people that he was with, I think I have, I actually did a whole bunch of reading last night about how, the story of how it all goes. Songs. Oh, interesting. So, Epic is a... Oh, hang on.
How many more albums does it have?
So sections. It's actually... Okay, so... The way sorry to completely go off track. I've just read this thing. So, Epic is a fully sung through musical consisting of 2 acts with 20 songs per act for a total of 40 songs. Furthermore, each act is divided into sagas or chapters. The entire musical has a runtime of 2 hours and 16 minutes. Act 1 is about 1 hour and 9 minutes and consists of 5 sagas, which is the Troy saga, Cyclops saga, Ocean saga, Circe saga, and Underworld saga, which we've had those 5 released for a while. And they've just released the first saga from the second act, which is about 1 hour and 7 minutes long. It will consist of the Thunder saga, the Wisdom saga, the Vengeance saga, and the Ithaca saga.
Oh.
So the way that the actual epic poem works is the majority of the poem is centered around the final 6 weeks of Odysseus' return home.
Yeah.
And the way the story goes, he faces all of these problems, but when he gets back, there's a whole bunch of people that have been using his suitors trying to marry his wife or trying to sleep with his wife. His wife has remained faithful the whole time. Odysseus is, I'm fairly sure, is the only one to make it back. His entire fleet of 600 men die along the way. And then he gets back and he kills all the suitors. He hatches a plan with a faithful shepherd and his son, kills all the suitors, and everyone lives happily ever after.
What a way to end.
But it's actually, people consider the Odyssey as one of the greatest stories, because it is actually, it's very human, the way he responds to the issues, the way he grapples with right versus wrong, good versus evil. And I love it because we're right at the bit where he's changed, he starts off with all 600 men and he says, I'm such a good strategist, I took 600 men to war, no one died.
And now he's coming back.
And now he's coming back, and he lost his best friend Polites, the Cyclops killed him, which really messes with him, but he's like, I'm going to live my life in a friendly manner to honor him, kind of thing. And then Poseidon comes down and kills 550 of his 600 men, makes the entire fleet drown. And then he loses, probably a few more in the underworld. And then he comes across the sirens, sirens from they sing songs to sailors and they drag him in, and kill him and eat him. He, survives all that. And then but the most recent bit is when he sails through the lair of Scylla, which, do you know Scylla? And I think it's a Charybdis or something like that. I don't know. I literally had it open last night. Let me check my browser history.
Is that the underworld stuff? Or?
Yeah, Scylla and Charybdis. No, so this, in Greek mythology, did you read Percy Jackson?
A little bit of, yeah.
Right, so there's a strait of water in Greek mythology which was known for, it was a really thin strip. On one side you had Scylla, on the other side you had Charybdis. Now, Scylla was this monster with 6 heads that would come up and eat people. And Charybdis was this monster that created a massive whirlpool and then shoved it all back up. Interestingly, they have actually located where they think, like in the real world, where they think this place was, and the reason being is it actually is a very treacherous area of water where on one side there is the way that the currents work is they go one way for a lot of time and then randomly they just switch and start going the other way, and so it creates this whirlpool style thing. So it actually is,
real.
It's really interesting to see where all of that comes from, and all that is real. But anyway, point being, new saga's out. It's called the Thunder Saga. There are 5 songs in it, which is different because most of the sagas when they come out have either 4 or 3.
Okay.
So this one we have Suffering, Different Beast, Scylla, Mutiny, and Thunderbringer, and they are superb.
Is there any visual with it? Is it so as a musical? Is it going to be a play?
So it's a musical. So it's just a concept album right now.
Okay.
So once it's fully released, I have a feeling it would be awesome to see.
Be expensive, I feel.
It would be, but all musicals are.
Yeah, I guess.
But the point, anyone who hasn't listened to the Epic the Musical before, I recommend highly that you go and do that. And I would recommend you do the same.
I will. I'm very interested in Greek mythology.
It's a great story. If you love Greek mythology, I really enjoy the storytelling of it all. I love because you see, and in my mind, we used to do drama. I like to put my mind into, if I was an actor, how would you portray this? And looking at how his ups and downs as a character, he's like, oh, I'm focusing on this right now, I'm focusing on that right now. I find it very interesting.
Wow, that is very interesting. You've sold me. I'm going to listen to it. I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, great musical. Would recommend. Listen to Epic. George Rivera Herons or Harris Herons, I think. Yeah, Herons. Oops, I should have known that. Sorry, buddy. These are great musical. Keep it up, and I love it. 2 things today. We didn't discuss the new Warhammer game, but we will talk about that in the next podcast, in the next episode.
Yes, so I hope you all learned something new, and this is, sometimes we might do it again if there's anything interesting to dedicate an episode to.
Yep.
New episodes every Monday, and make sure to subscribe and leave a comment about your thoughts on either Julian Assange or the new Epic musical.
Yeah, let us know. And if there's anything you want to hear us discuss, please let us know in the comments. So,
Thank you so much for watching. Have a beer on us, and I'll see you mates in the next one. Bye, guys.